A communist?
Communist.
Because they're communists.
Everyone has an opinion about communism. Almost nobody knows what it is. Obama? Communist. The Democrats? Communist. Cuba? Communist. Free school lunches? Somehow also communist. The word gets thrown around so much it's basically lost all meaning, like literally or artisanal. But unlike those words, this one carries the weight of millions of deaths, revolutions, and a century of geopolitical terror. So maybe we should know what it actually means before we use it to win arguments on the internet. Today, we're going back to the source, to the guy who started it all. And I promise you, what he actually said is way more interesting than what you think he said. Let's get into it. Picture this. It's the 1840s. The Industrial Revolution is in full swing. Children are working in factories. People are losing fingers in machines for pennies. And one very angry German philosopher with the world's most iconic beard is watching all of this unfold and thinking, this system is going to eat itself. That man was Karl Marx. Now, before you check out, oh great, a lecture about Marx, hang on. Because whether you love him or hate him, this guy's ideas literally shaped the modern world. Every political argument you've ever had exists in his shadow. So it's worth spending 5 minutes actually understanding him. Together with Friedrich Engels, his intellectual partner and, let's be honest, his financial sponsor, Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto in 1848. Later came Das Kapital, which is roughly the size of a small car and twice as dense. But the core ideas? Surprisingly straightforward. Here's the pitch. Throughout all of human history, society has been organized around one question. Who controls the stuff that makes wealth? The land, the factories, the tools. Marx called these the means of production. In feudal times, the aristocracy controlled the land. In capitalism, the bourgeoisie, the owner class, control the factories and capital. And the proletariat, that's you, me, anyone who works for a wage, we sell our labor to survive. And here's the part that made Marx dangerous. He argued that profit itself is extraction. The difference between what a worker produces and what they're paid, he called that surplus value. And he said the entire system runs on it. Not as a bug, as a feature. So what did Marx want to do about it? This is where everyone gets it wrong, and I mean everyone. Here's the thing nobody tells you. Marx didn't think communism was a policy platform. He didn't think you could just vote it in on a Tuesday afternoon between lunch and a dentist appointment. He saw it as the final destination of a long, inevitable historical process. And it has characteristics so radical that when I list them, you're going to immediately realize something important. Ready? Number 1. Communism has no state, no government, no bureaucracy, no political parties, no president, nothing. Marx believed the state only exists to protect whoever's in power. Once class is abolished, the state becomes pointless and just dissolves. He literally said it would wither away, his words. Number 2, communism has no money, no wages, no currency, no stock market, no prices. The guiding principle is, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. You contribute what you can, you receive what you need. Number 3, no private ownership of the means of production. Factories, farms, infrastructure, they belong to everyone. Not to a government on behalf of the people, to the people directly, collectively, horizontally. Now, hold those 3 things in your head and ask yourself a very simple question. Does that sound like the Soviet Union to you? Does that sound like Cuba? Does that sound like any country that has ever existed on planet Earth? Yeah, I didn't think so either. So if none of those countries were communist, what were they? And why does everyone keep calling them that? Enter Vladimir Lenin and a concept called Marxism-Leninism. When the Bolsheviks seized power in Russia in 1917, Lenin had a problem. Marx's theory assumed communism would emerge from advanced industrial capitalism, places like Germany or England. Russia was still a largely agrarian peasant society. They weren't anywhere near ready, so Lenin improvised. He proposed a transitional phase. A vanguard party, a small group of disciplined revolutionaries, would seize the state and use it to drag society toward communism. The state was supposed to be a temporary vehicle, a ladder you'd climb and then kick away. They never kicked the ladder away. What happened instead was the creation of a one-party authoritarian state with a command economy. The government controlled production. Workers still earned wages. There was still a very clear hierarchy, just a new one. The state didn't wither. It became one of the most powerful, most oppressive state apparatuses in human history. And here's the kicker. Even the USSR knew this. They never called themselves communist. Read the name, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Socialist. They always said communism was the goal, the distant, shining future they were building toward. They just never got there. Trotsky, one of Lenin's own allies, watched Stalin take over and called the whole thing a degenerated workers' state, a revolution betrayed. Plenty of Marxist thinkers across the spectrum refused to call the Soviet Union communist. Some called it state capitalism, because a government bureaucracy extracting surplus value from workers isn't structurally that different from a corporate board doing the same thing. You just swap the boss. Cuba and China, same playbook. Strong single-party states, command economies, nationalist identity wrapped in Marxist language. They're more accurately described as authoritarian socialist states, experiments in Marxism-Leninism, not examples of Marxist communism. Okay, now we arrive at the truly unhinged part of this whole conversation. The claim, made frequently, loudly, and with absolute confidence, that the United States Democratic Party is communist. The Democrats, the party of Joe Biden, the party of Bill Clinton, the party that takes enormous amounts of money from Wall Street, bails out banks, and campaigns on keeping private health insurance intact, while maybe also covering a few more people. That party, communist. Let's hold this up to the light for a second. What most Democrats advocate for is called social democracy. It's a model where capitalism stays, but the government regulates it and provides a safety net. Public schools, healthcare access, minimum wage laws, labor protections. This is capitalism with guardrails. It is not communism. It is not even socialism in any classical sense. Bernie Sanders, the furthest left mainstream politician in America, calls himself a democratic socialist and points to Denmark and Sweden as his models. Denmark and Sweden are capitalist countries. They have stock markets, they have billionaires, they have private enterprise everywhere. They just also have free healthcare and generous parental leave. Denmark's own prime minister literally had to stand up at Harvard and say, Denmark is far from a socialist planned economy. Denmark is a market economy. If Marx could see someone calling the Democratic Party communist, I think he'd have the same expression you'd have if someone pointed at a Honda Civic and called it a spaceship. Technically, they're both vehicles. That's about where the similarities end. If the distinction is this obvious, why does the confusion survive? Why does it thrive? 3 reasons, and honestly, the third one should make all of us a little uncomfortable. Reason 1, the Cold War broke everyone's brain. For 50 years, the United States government used communist as a catch-all term for anything it opposed. The Soviet Union, communist. Labor unions, communist. Civil rights leaders, communist. The word stopped being a description and became a weapon, a rhetorical grenade you could throw at anyone to make them radioactive. McCarthy built an entire career on it, and that usage didn't die with the Cold War. It fossilized into culture. Reason 2, it works as political strategy. Calling your opponent a communist is effective precisely because most people don't know what it means. The word conjures gulags, breadlines, authoritarian nightmares, and that emotional reaction is the whole point. It's what scholars call a thought-terminating cliché, a phrase designed to end thinking rather than start it, and it works, every time. Reason 3, and this one's on the left, the socialist states themselves muddied the waters. When the Soviet Union branded itself the vanguard of world communism while running a totalitarian police state, it gave the West a reason to conflate the two. The branding was always a mess, and a lot of Western leftists spent decades defending regimes they shouldn't have, which made the confusion worse. The result? A world where the word communism means nothing and everything at the same time. And that's not just annoying, it's actually dangerous. Because if you can't tell the difference between let's tax billionaires to fund public schools and let's abolish private property and dissolve the state, then you can't have a real conversation about anything. You're just hurling labels into the void. And in a world dealing with inequality, climate collapse, and genuine questions about how to organize an economy, we need real conversations more than ever. I want to leave you with something that's been bugging me throughout this entire script. We live in a world with access to more information than any generation in human history. Libraries in our pockets, entire university courses free on YouTube. And yet we're less precise with our political language than people were 100 years ago. That's not an accident. Vagueness benefits the people who don't want you thinking clearly. Every time a word like communism gets stripped of its meaning and turned into a generic insult, someone, somewhere benefits from your confusion. So here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to tell you what to believe. I'm not going to tell you Marx was right. I'm not going to tell you socialism is good or capitalism is bad or any of that. What I am going to tell you is this. The next time someone calls something communist, ask them to define it. Watch what happens. I've linked some genuinely excellent books and resources in the description if you want to go deeper. And I want to hear from you. Drop a comment telling me what you think I got wrong. I'm serious. Tear it apart. That's how we all get sharper. See you in the next one.